So welcome everybody to Tea and Buns, virtual Tea and Buns, no calories, which is a group of people who get together each month on different topics when opportunity permits. So we're delighted you're here with us today, and as always we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which QUT now stands and pay respect to their elders, laws, customs and creation spirits. And we recognise that these lands have always been places of research, teaching and learning, and QUT acknowledges the important role that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within our community and the community beyond. So I guess our ground rules for this next hour, so it's really that any views or opinions represented here are not necessarily the opinion of QUT, and it's great if you can mute yourself just to stop that noise interference. The chat box is up there for you to add any questions or to give your opinion. And if you wanted to speak up, by all means, that's more than okay. If you'd like to speak on your microphone, just say, can I chat, or raise your hand. And of course, I think it goes without saying that this sector is about respect and tolerance of many different views. So that's how we operate Tea and Buns. So I'm Wendy Scaife, and I'm Director of the Australian Centre for Philanthropy and Non-Profit Studies here at QUT, and I also lead the Social Purpose Research Team in QUT's new Centre for Future Enterprise. So if you're interested in the future of our sector, then I think there's going to be some interesting work coming out on that, and we're always keen to hear what it is you want to know. But in particular this morning, it's our session is hinged around a very special lady, Dylys Bertelsen, who many of you will know. And Dylys is CEO of the Windsor Group, which is a social enterprise. And the Windsor Group delivers HR, executive search and staffing solutions, and provides strategic HR and recruitment advice to many well-known names in our sector. Dylys herself, of course, is a bit of a landmark in our sector. Dylys started Windsor back in '99, before our centre started, in fact. And Dylys actually we know well because she came and was telling us about her work in the non-profit recruitment side of things, and our course was starting, and Dylys said, oh well, I better do that course. So Dylys is also a past alumni chapter president for our alumni chapter for the ACPNS. And also board member of non-profit boards, major gift committee member, etc., etc. Great supporter of the sector in many ways. So welcome, Dylys. Delighted you can be with us.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for that lovely introduction. Thank you. And you're absolutely right. It was yours and Miles's very gentle persuasion that got me involved in the centre, and I haven't really looked back since. You've been a wonderful supporter, so thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Dylys. So let's get into this conversation today. So we've got a few questions that we thought would be good starters, and I'm just going to throw them straight to our expert, Dylys. And that big overall general one, Dylys, how has COVID-19 affected non-profit and social enterprise jobs? You're right in the centre of this. You're hearing the stories and seeing it all. So what's been your experience there?
I was hoping to really deliver something to you this morning that was not publicly available, but together with some research. And I have to say I've struggled to find real stats and figures anywhere about job numbers and unemployment within the non-profit sector. We know that we've all suffered and over the last number of months. But this is really from the conversations that I've been having with CEOs and board members and my colleagues that are talking to senior management and office support staff across the non-profit sector. So it's very much about my experience because, as you would know too, Wendy, it's really tricky to find really good statistics on the non-profit sector. But I thought I would share with you a couple of facts around the jobs that are available at the moment. Right now, in Queensland, there's 23,664 live jobs. The non-profits constitute about 1,700 of those jobs. 51 of those are with ourselves, and other recruiters. But the way it's been trending over the last number of months, if we look back to January, we had 128 jobs in the non-profit sector live. In February, it went down to 99. In March, it went to 67. In April, it went to 26. June, 38. And July, we've got 51. So right now, we've got 51. Now, that's compared to 124 for last year. So you can see that the live jobs in non-profit organisations in Queensland is significantly less than what it was. And we know our business has really suffered. We qualify for JobKeeper, thankfully, and it's been a wonderful lifeline. So we know that the jobs have been difficult to find with our clients, and we also know that a lot of our clients that would normally have come to us are actually trying to do it on their own at the moment because of affordability, I guess. So right across the board, though I don't think there would be an organisation that hasn't been affected in some way. Some, I have to say, are doing very well though, but they've still been affected by COVID-19. Others have been quote unquote decimated. So I think depending on where the dollars are coming from, those that rely heavily on the donated dollar and events particularly, because they've been cancelled, of course, they're really, really suffering. And we know that the arts sector has really been hammered, for want of a better expression. So it's really varied because the non-profit sector is made up of so many different types of organisations. We go from one extreme to the other. But I thought that might be interesting for you to see what's going on in terms of jobs available at the moment. The 23,000 jobs available in Queensland, that's quite a significant number of jobs. And it appears that we are trending as we have been over the last number of years because we track these stats on live jobs. So the trend is still, interestingly, the same, other than the real exceptional dip or reduction in roles available in April going down to 26. But otherwise the trend is usual, which is actually probably a little bizarre, really.
Dylys, thank you for those insights. I think that probably we would be unsurprised that the trend has been in that way. I think that we all know the cards that have been dealt to organisations and ourselves in these current times, and I guess Queensland perhaps is a little less affected than other parts of the country, at least, and until unless there is some sort of outbreak. I think you raise a few interesting points there. Obviously, there are different types of non-profit organisations, and always in these times someone does well. In for-profit or non-profit, there's more demand for particular services or more support for particular services. The stories are out there. Lots of talk, I think, today about domestic violence. I was hearing on the radio, and so I think there are opportunities as well for certain organisations that where the need is really being highlighted, and the support perhaps is there for those organisations. I think you raise as well the issue of good recruitment, and it's not my bailiwick to promote recruitment agencies, but I think that probably many of us on the call would have experienced poor recruitment and what sometimes happens when there's we try to do things without a proper process, and that can be costly as well. So I don't know if anyone from the group would like to comment on those numbers that you were hearing from Dylys, or make any comments. Please feel welcome to put something in the chat group or to ask a question of Dylys on this particular one. So you're very welcome to do that. Just put "Can I chat?" into the chat room is going to be the easiest way for me to see, because it's quite a number of us now on the call. Or if there's any surprises there, by all means just pitch in. But if not, and I'll give you a minute to just write, but if not, Dylys, let's look at the implication of, so Claire, welcome Claire, good to have you with us from Victoria. Those numbers are certainly in line with what you're seeing available in Melbourne. Yeah. Yes, our sector certainly has been hit, and we now just have to work towards building up again. So thanks, Claire. So I guess that the flow on. There's a very personal element to all of this. So whether you are still employed and others around you are under threat, or whether you have had to face some form of redundancy or end of contract that's not renewed, how is it that we can support our team and colleagues who are worried about losing or changing their job, Dylys?
I think the key thing is it's about the quality of the engagement right across the organisation. So I think and I'd be really interested to hear different ways that other organisations have been engaging with their colleagues. But I think that really good quality and regular engagement from the board right the way down to the frontline workers. Every single person within the organisation needs to be feeling well looked after and supported in a really genuine way, with regular check-ins and clear direction. Because I think working from home and not being able to learn by osmosis, if you like, that perhaps even the more junior of the staff are feeling a little bit out of sorts, and they haven't got someone that they can lean on or they can talk to immediately. So really clear direction, engaged, and regular check-ins with all the staff or small team meetings, I think are really, really important. And I think some of the things that we've been doing within our team are, Amy will send me a coffee and it'll be on my doorstep at 7:30 in the morning. Little things that we know are important to individuals. And let's face it, I think in this time, again, I think it's a little bizarre that it's taken this sort of crisis for us to actually come to know our colleagues a little better. So we're actually welcomed you're in my home, and my colleagues are in my home and I'm in their homes. And we're getting to know the pets and the husband and the children and the chickens in Nick's place. She's got chickens. So we are getting to know our colleagues a little bit better. So I think by reaching out and engaging and asking, are you well? How are you? And if they're not, having some support network in place and it be readily available for them, and that to be clear and clearly articulated, that there are places, there are people to talk to, because you may not be capable of doing that or providing that level of support for the individual. So a policy, it needs to be really clear that these are the organisations that we would recommend that you go to. So genuine, caring, empathetic support of one another.
Dylys, I hear you, and I hope that that's been available to the people on our call. Certainly that would be the experience that we have seen as well. People having a coffee chat, once a week with the key director in their area, which would never have happened. And of course, this is all online. And the amount of people who are attending meetings online that normally, would have been just passed up, I think. And I think certainly with our team, we've always just started now asking, how are you personally, how are you professionally, what's going on? And I guess always just reiterating that help is there, that are you okay question as a genuine and authentic question, and that we're all in this together, the phrase that we hear so much through COVID. Now, we've got some great comments coming through, so if I may pass on perhaps a couple of questions to you, Dylys, or comments. So Marg Scott, welcome Marg from the beautiful Gold Coast. You've been watching CEO and board member advertising. CEOs have slowed right down, but board member job postings have kept strong. How interesting is that? Dylys, did you want to comment on Marg's research there for her PhD at ACPNS, by the way? One part of it anyway.
That is interesting, Marg. I think looking at the stats that I was talking about this morning on live jobs, I think 10% of those jobs that are available at the moment are CEO roles. The boards the board recruitment is alive and well, and possibly it's about the majority, or no, maybe not the majority, but a lot of the board positions are available are volunteers. They're not being paid. So whether that is why that is alive and well, I'm just not sure. But and I guess maybe one of the other reasons is that the work that would be involved at the board level right now would have to be, in some cases, too demanding of an individual. So possibly there's a bit of churn there at the board because of lack of capability, lack of time and focus with other things going on in life. But I honestly, I'm not sure, but there are a couple of things that I can personally think of. But the 10% of CEO roles out of what's available at the moment is fairly normal in terms of trending from what I can see. But Marg, I would love to have a further conversation with you about this, because this information would be really valuable for me. Thank you.
Can I make a quick comment, Wendy? Am I allowed?
Yep, by all means, Marg.
Yeah, I've been watching the market since about August last year, and it's really very interesting what's happening, as you've observed. The board roles, I wonder whether it's taking longer to fill those roles because, as you say, board members, and I can certainly speak for one, with the amount of work that's going on with boards at the moment. Maybe, I guess the other thing is that board roles don't seem to be time limited as much as CEO roles too. And yet I still see new board roles coming on, many in Victoria, but all around Australia, and Australia organisations that have a board that just covers the whole of Australia as well. So I haven't contacted any of these organisations because I'm just collecting data at the moment, but I just found it fascinating, you know.
Mm.
But
Thanks.
there's certainly the demand out there for board members.
Absolutely, Marg, and I guess leadership at this time is absolutely critical. Maybe organisations are realising that there may be an opportunity to capture some people who may have been made redundant, people with fantastic skills, whether that's from non-profit or for-profit, and to have that opportunity to provide, you know, something special in their life as well. I know a lot of my friends who have been made redundant are out volunteering, some of them for the first time in their life. So that's been a real eye-opener, I think, for people as well. But we do have some other questions. So Margie, thanks very much for putting that one on, and Dylys for your answer. So Nina is talking about retrenchments, and I would say my morning started by looking at some of the UK non-profit press, and Comic Relief is just going to cut a quarter of its staff. And that's an events-based organisation, and even though some of their virtual events are going well, they've really got to find that $5 million through the door to be able to pay staff, and their investments are down. So there's many factors, I think, that lead to, you know, these dreadful decisions that no one wants to take. But Nina is asking, Dylys, do you anticipate retrenchments to equal the anticipated percentage of downturn in the sector for donations? And some say even up to 30%. How's your crystal ball, Dylys?
Oh, golly, I wish I had one. I wish I had one. And, but I possibly not, because if we look at the percentages of live jobs at the moment, and the majority of, well, there's about 20% in finance, just under 20% in community services, but and 14% in office support at the moment. They're the major, 12% in HR. They're the major job titles or occupations at the moment. In the for-profit, we're seeing lots of business development and sales type of role. And I'm wondering whether the organisations will recognise that, in fact, we picked up a brief this morning for a very specific role that is going to be around engagement and direction, policy direction for the organisation, that the organisations are recognising that they need people in these frontline roles. They need to have people that will be engaging with their donors to bring in the extra funds. So whether there will be an upsurge in requirements in this area within the organisations, you'd think that might be a possibility. I mean, if I look at my own business, I'm really, really keen to improve the hours, and we're doing it gradually. We're coming back out of 20 hours a week. We're increasing the number of hours of the consultants because we're seeing a slight upswing in the number of roles that are coming through to us, and it's telling on Seek. That's what's happening. So I'm hoping that the fundraisers, those that are going to be able to get out and to develop income streams for the organisations, maybe they're going to be some of the first roles to come online. I don't know, but we also do know that a number of boards that I've been talking to, they've made it a policy that they're going to keep the staff on as best they can. There might be reduced hours, but they recognise how important, especially the fundraisers, as you would know, Mark, very important people. We can't let go of them. We might have them on part-time, but the sooner we can bring them back into this difficult environment, and I think we're not going to see it change, we don't think, for any time soon. If you look at what's happening on the south side of Brisbane at the moment, I don't think this environment is going to go away anytime soon. So we have to get used to this new environment and try our best to get back to as much as we can. It won't ever be business as usual, but we need to recognise that this is the environment we need to work in. So I'm hoping that we don't, Nina. I hope it doesn't. Hope that this upswing continues to, of course we do, we all do.
So thank you, Dylys, for that considered opinion, and thank you, Nina, for a great question. And I think, to highlight a few of the things that really resonate in what you were saying for me there, we are a sector that supports one another. We are a sector with a different culture and HR generally, not in every case, but generally to what we might see in the for-profit sector. And sharing the burden is something that I think is part of what we all do. Sacrifice, for whatever reason, is something that's within most of us who work within the non-profit sector. So I think those are the heartening parts of that. But there are, pitted against that, the harsh realities that some organisations just weren't in a good space to start with, or didn't have the reserves to be able to withstand this, and therefore do need to trim their sails at these times. We can only hope that those that are doing well are able to provide opportunities for those that are out in the marketplace. And that, that wonderful trend of if you volunteer somewhere, that sometimes you end up with a job at that place, that in fact comes true for those people that are actually showing their wares and their skills in organisations. We've got a nice segue into Cherie. Thank you for your question, Cherie, which is, have there been any changes to the type of roles NFPs are recruiting for? Are they looking for specialist skills like major gifts and trusts and foundations, or for more general skills and knowledge? And I think you started to allude to this, Dylys.
I did, and I think, Cherie, unfortunately, I think it's a little early because we have seen such a reduction in the number of roles available, and we're only just starting to see that upswing in June. June, July more so really. It's probably still a little bit early to tell. The types of roles that we are recruiting for at the moment, most of them are actually the pipeline from back in February. So they have been their positions that the organisations had already targeted, they already had in their budget, but they put on hold. So they're coming back in. I don't see at this stage that many major gifts or trust and foundation roles at the moment, but I would anticipate that they will, because they'll need to, because we know that area has struggled. So they'll be bringing people back, they'll be upping the hours, I would think. But I don't have any sense of any, well, the other specific role, as I mentioned earlier, the one that we picked up this morning, that was very different, a little bit different from the norm. But I think I'm sorry, Sherry, I think it's probably a little bit early to tell.
So thanks, Dylys, for that, and thanks, Sheree, for your question. I think it's interesting that philanthropy's response to COVID-19 has been very much an above and beyond. And so you're probably aware, many of you on the call, that Philanthropy Australia created a pledge for people as to what they might do in that above and beyond kind of mode to help organisations and the community at this time. So many of them are, and with government assistance as well, or government permission, they're giving beyond what they would normally give, the minimum percentage that they would normally give from their corpus, and they're going to fix it up later, you know, be able to kind of recoup at a time when investment markets are a little bit better, but also particularly not stopping the grants flow, particularly working with current grantees and giving them flexibility. I don't know if anyone's had experience with that. So if you've been given money for a project, for some of these foundations are very happy for you to turn it towards other purposes that keep the organisation doing what it's doing. So I think there are some good parts that we have seen as a result of this, and some good thinking. So just to, and thank you for everyone for your participation. Honey is saying thanks for that comment about inviting board members from those who've been made redundant. I do think, I think self-esteem is everything, and I think it's so easy to feel against yourself and down when you do lose your job, or you see someone that you think should have lost theirs. I'm joking, but you know that you know, you feel like those cards have been dealt badly to you, and it's important to remember the skills that you have and what contribution you do make in the community, even if it is not at a paid role at this time. Louise is asking, what advice would you have for graduates or early career practitioners trying to build a career in the non-profit sector? How can they use this time to have nimble and agile skills for the sector? Thanks, Louise, for that question. Over to you, Dylys.
Thank you. That's a really, really good question. And perhaps if we're assuming that that particular individual is not in work at the moment, I have a philosophy that if you spend the 40 hours or 38 hours a week trying to find the role, then, and you plan your week accordingly with very little white space in your diary, and you plan to do research, you plan to have meetings with individuals, you plan to have some time that is about you and what makes you feel nice and good and healthy, whether it's exercise, walking the dog, or meditation, whatever that is. But you fill the week with activities, then at the end of the week you can tick that box and be feeling that you've been productive and you've done your best with the time that you have available. So it's a job to find a job. But specifically, if we look back at the figures, and where the jobs are at the moment in the non-profit sector, and the number of jobs that the agencies have. So July, 51, the agencies have 51 jobs, but there's 1,700 live jobs in other organisations. So we as agencies only have a tiny slice of the pie. The organisations themselves, that's where you should be spending your time. So if it is that you think of a particular area of the sector within the sector that you are particularly interested in, and then you identify the organisations that you would like to be working for, and you go through an elimination process and you reach out to them. So in that week, in your activities in your week, it's research about those particular organisations. Then who are the individuals that within those organisations that you should be talking to? And also where do those individuals that are going to be able to make a difference for you within the non-profit sector, what forums do they associate with? Where do they go? How do they meet? I know it's a little bit tricky at the moment because we're all online, but there are, as Wendy said at the outset, lots of webinars that you can attend, but needing to be very visible and doing as much as you can to get in front of the people within the non-profit sector, within the organisations that you're interested in. So, and if you set yourself some targets each week to be able to achieve so many, if you can, coffee meetings with people. Now, I know this rolls off the tongue really easily, and I know that it's not an easy thing to do. But I think if you can set yourself these targets, plot them into the diary, and then by hook or by crook, you will get there. You absolutely will. It's about networking, engaging with the right people, being seen to be networking in the correct form. You've got to be in the pool. I guess somebody said to me years ago, Dylys, you've got to be in the pool with the other board members. That's what you've got to be doing. So you've got the time right now to also assess what it is that you have to offer those organisations and be really ready with your elevator pitch, if you like, when you manage to get somebody on the other end of the phone. So have done some work on your CV, understanding what you're particularly good at, where your strengths are, what your transferable skills are. You'll know the organisation by this stage. You'll know perhaps what the challenges are that they're facing and how you might be able to help them. So this is about what can you offer the organisation to try and encourage a conversation with them. And then once you're in the meeting, then you've really got the opportunity to sell yourself to them. So it's much the same as any other sector or finding a position in any sector, any organisation. It takes preparation and a lot of time and effort, really. And you've got that right now. I'm hoping that's covered that, Wendy.
That's terrific, Jill. Thank you so much. And Margaret is talking about the fact there are a lot of free training offerings out there for people at this time, Louise, and and keeping in touch with the sector community. So a couple of things particularly again resonated there with me, Dylys, the networking side of things. I think that there's very few people in our sector who won't have a cup of coffee with you or a phone call or a Zoom meeting if you ask for their advice. And yes, so X Factor Collective and McCrindle are on today, Mark. Thank you so much. In terms of other things, I think, and goodbye, Nina. Sorry, I'll just cut in to say goodbye to Nina. It's good that you were able to be with us. And in terms of being able to get along to sector events, even if they are virtual events, it's probably a little easier now that they are virtual events, many of them. So I think, again, that to be able to contact those peak bodies of the areas where you might want to work, whether it's the fundraising institute or the professional area you want to work, whether it's include a charity if you're interested in the bequest side of things, or if it's association executives or whatever it might be that you want to do. I think most people will try and find a way for you to attend. I know certainly I've been delighted on odd occasions when students have had a particular interest to say, well, I'm going along to that meeting, come as my guest, I'm very happy to pay for a sandwich for you and to introduce you to a few people. So I think there's genuine support out there. I think those of us still in jobs are feeling how precious that is and wanting to assist those who've not been so fortunate at this time. So Maria's got another question. Are there any useful tips you could share when doing company research to seek out the core characteristics that align with your goals, purpose, interest, etc., as you mentioned? That's an interesting question, Maria. Dylys?
That's a really interesting question, and thankfully we have access through Google and to be able to do the research that you need to do. But often you're reading what they want you to see. So again, I think it's being proactive. So you can check out on the website, you can have a look at who the organisations partner with. who are their clients, who are their key stakeholders. So you're going to get a good feel for the organisation. But I think the best way is to be having meetings with the individuals that work in those environments. And as you said, Wendy, people do seem to have the time and are willing to talk at the moment. That's what we've found anyway, that they are willing to engage with you. And especially if you're, it might not be for now, but it could be for down the track. They will, perhaps if you can, organise a few meetings with key people within the areas of the organisation that you have an interest in, just to get a really good feel for the organisation. It would be a good thing for that organisation to be meeting with people, prospective employees down the track, because they don't know what's coming either. And if you've got good skill sets to offer that particular organisation, I'd be very surprised if they said, thanks, but no thanks. I'm sure they would have a virtual coffee with you. So yes, doing all the research you can on the internet, the ACNC, if it is, excuse me, if that's appropriate, any other background checks that you can do online, but I would certainly be encouraging having conversations with individuals that work within the organisation and perhaps even partner with that organisation to get a better feel.
Thanks, Dylys, and thanks very much for that question, Maria. I think some companies still put up value statements, and I think that's useful to be able to, particularly if you've come from the non-profit sector previously, to be able to sort of say, well, this is, you know, how I acted on my values. I volunteered here, or I did this, and it's a really good match with, you know, the soul of your company. So I think that values matching is an interesting one that you mentioned there. And some strategies there from Dylys as well, and a virtual meeting. You know, if you ask for a 10-minute virtual meeting, it's amazing what you might get. And Louise was asking on behalf of our QUT students, and Louise is from the health faculty as well as part of ACPNS, and academics benefit from a list of those networking groups that we could send to our students. By all means, we can perhaps send something out. Claire is taking us towards our next question, which is talking about virtual work. So Dylys, we'll jump into it. Do you think there'll be a change in how organisations will allow staff to work in future, more virtual and work from home arrangements to allow flexibility on a long-term basis after COVID?
That is happening already. That is happening. In actual fact, there are quite a number of jobs that are being advertised at the moment, and the location is work from home. That's where the location is. So I think it's throughout Australia, about 1,700, I think, or 1,900, 1,900 jobs. So I'm hearing that right across the board, that they're being very flexible. Once upon a time, I mean, I can think of, and I probably shouldn't name, but I can, and myself, I have always been a little bit nervous about individuals working from home. So maybe I'll talk about me. I've been very nervous about that. But now I know that it can be done. And in actual fact, productivity in some organisation has actually risen. So we know that, and I know that from talking to board members and CEOs and individuals within our client base. So I think certainly there will be the opportunity to have that very flexible approach. And we know that there are some people that are really struggling to get back into, or they don't want to go back into the workplace. So, and if they can be productive at home, then we're certainly allowing that to continue in that way. So I think that is happening right across the board. I don't know any organisation that we're talking to at the moment that isn't allowing that flexibility to happen. I believe there is a case there, Wendy, where people are actually taking people to court to get them back into the office. But I think that's a rare thing. And it's hopefully not within the non-profit sector.
Wow. And I was thinking that about the comic relief story I mentioned earlier, where they are cutting staff. One of their cost-cutting measures as well is to cut the size of their offices and to have more people working from home as a way to work more efficiently.
Absolutely.
So will be an interesting thing to see.
Mm.
And Dylys, just while we're on that virtual one, could you give people any tips on being interviewed virtually? Because that's happening a bit more than usual now too.
It certainly is. And I think we come back to the preparation again. I think being mindful of what's going on in your home environment at that time. Just immediately prior to coming online this morning, the gardeners are going, the vacuuming's happening downstairs. We're needing to plan a time in the day when you know you're going to be able to have some peace and quiet and absolute focus, because talking into a camera, if you're not doing these meetings every day of the week, it can be really disconcerting and nerve-wracking. And we also had an example of the technology not working right at the very beginning. And we hear it, and it's happened with some of our candidates that are being interviewed online, that they've had a disaster run, that the technology has failed them several times throughout that meeting. And they walk away, the poor candidate is walking away saying, I'm so sorry, I completely muffed that interview. So being prepared, making sure that you've had practice runs, and if you could have some family members or some friends on the other line, on the other side of this, looking at you and giving you some advice on how you're appearing. Are you just, because it's amazing how many meetings I've had where you're looking at belly buttons and the double chin, and they're looking up, and they're all sorts of different angles. So practice it, be prepared, get your technology right, get the background right as you can within the organ. Sometimes you can have your backgrounds if you can. I personally can't have it on Zoom. It won't work for me with the technology that I've got here. So welcome to my home. But preparation, technology, practice it, and also be, fortunately, you can have all your notes in front of you that your interviewer isn't going to see. So that's the joy of doing it online. There is a silver lining here. So you can have your notes, but be ready for questions, I think, but this applies to any interview. Being prepared to be able to ask some pertinent questions about the organisation. So you've done your homework, and it's obvious that you've done your homework. Be really clear in what it is that you bring to the organisation, that you can clearly articulate your strengths and your experiences that match the role that is on offer. So you've done your homework, and this is what you can do, and this is where you've done it before. And talking slowly and ideally at the camera so that they see you. And I think that's probably, they're the main things really, Wendy. Preparation, technology, yes.
And it is disconcerting, and I think the old days when we used to try and answer questions into a mirror to see how we were going, and then you just sort of stop and go, oh no, that was just dreadful. But if you persevere, it gets a little bit better. And family are very good critics, aren't they?
Yeah.
And Elizabeth has mentioned for people in the QT community on the topic of QT Business Advantage course is fabulous, and they have something on virtual interviews and how to set up your home for this type of interview. So thanks for that, Elizabeth. Very helpful. Now we've got a really meaty and important question here from Natalia that I'll jump back to. And Honey, it is around the employer's point of view, Dylys. Your thoughts about the dilemma of keeping more staff at reduced hours versus having lesser staff but with more decent hours. So, example, 10 staff at 10 hours each, or 5 staff at 20 hours. And they're struggling with this, Natalia is saying, giving few staff decent shifts and respecting their livelihood versus helping more, but everybody hurts a bit more. And I think Honey has endorsed this and said that they're seriously considering letting go of staff after the JobKeeper finishes, and they worry about the effect on the mental health of staff. So Dylys, do you want to tackle this one?
Well, give it a go. Having had to do this myself recently, and now in a position where we're starting to increase the number of hours of the individuals that are working in the team, I think if you can keep the people that you have on reduced hours, I'm sure that they'd be very thankful for it, because we don't know what's around the corner. I think if we can continue in this way and find opportunities to secure the business so that it is that much more sustainable, we do have extra revenue streams coming through the door, we can gradually start increasing the hours of the people that we have.
Mm.
That's my view. I guess there would be different circumstances in different organisations where it might work better the other way. But I know, having had the conversation with some of my team, that one of them said particularly, Dylys, I'm really happy that I have a job right now. So I'm really delighted that it might not be the hours that I would once have had, but I have a job. And we are working really hard to make sure that we stay around and we get better at doing this and we increase our revenue, and so that in the not too distant future, we'll be able to provide more hours of work. And I certainly see, as we said before at the very outset, there is an upswing. There are more roles out there at the moment. Hopefully we're, I don't know whether we're out of it, we won't be out of it, but we'll continue to improve. So I think it'd be a shame to let go of those staff, but obviously there are organisations that really need to do that at the moment, and you have no choice, and that's a really, really tough thing to do, really tough.
I think it's particularly tough when you think about there may be team members who are able to add more value to where you are in your strategy at the moment, and they may be more needed in the organisation for its longer term survival. And then you have those equity issues of someone's getting more hours or whatever, and those are the tough and the courageous decisions that leaders have to make, and they're not easy decisions, and they might not make them easy. It might not make it easy for you to sleep at night sometimes, but there are many considerations beyond the individual, I guess, particularly in non-profit organisations. The consideration is what you're delivering in the community or for people or environments or animals. So it's I think a really meaty question that Natalia, you've posed, and Honey as well. Dylys, I did jump over a comment from Marg, who was curious to know if you would go back to your former view on people working from home over time.
What I'm doing right now is making the office safe, and finance is actually working in the office again. And we've actually restricted the numbers of people that are allowed to be in the office at any one time, but realistically with the space, we could probably have the entire team in there. But what I'm conscious of is on reduced hours, need to get onto public transport. I don't think it would be right of me to say, I want you all back in the office. So it's safe, you can go if you want to, and that's the way we're going to leave it for the time being. The thing that we're missing, well, one of the things that we miss out on though, is what I talked about before, learning by osmosis, the team work, being able to just shout across the office or tap the shoulder of your colleague and ask a question. So there's certain things that there's a certain downside to working from home, that being able to energize an individual that may be having a bit of a down day with a few words of kindness, because you can see that they're not tracking terribly well. Online, that's a bit tricky if it doesn't appear in the team meeting. So there's definitely a downside to continue to working from home, but we will certainly be very much more flexible in future, because I know that how productive individuals can be, and some of our team would prefer to be at home. I've got one person that will not come back into work, but not that she has been in work she worked for us for 13 years, and I think we probably count the number of days on one hand that she's actually spent in the office, probably slightly exaggeration, but but certain people don't particularly want to go back in, and I absolutely understand that. And especially if you've got vulnerable people within your home. I've got an 87-year-old mum, so I'm very, very careful about where I go and who I associate with, and would I actually have a cup of coffee with that person. Right now, do I know their background? Am I sure that they're safe to talk to? And that's an awful thing to have to think about, really. But I think it's really, really important. So absolutely, Mark, we'll continue to be flexible.
Thanks, Jill. And Sharon, thanks for your comment. Those quick decisions on the run when you're working together. Yes, I think it's frustrating, some elements of the working from home. And as you say, Dylys, certainly the feedback from our team in here is that for some people it's a better working environment. It's quieter. There's less chatter, laughter, movement. And for others, they need the chatter, laughter, movement, and they're not energised if they don't have that. So it sometimes comes back to individual personalities. And Juliana, thank you for being with us. And Marg is saying, Dylys, you're very supportive. I'd like to think that many employers would think likewise. Hard to teach old dogs new tricks sometimes. That trust thing, isn't it, Dylys, that you referred to before? And I think anybody who's employed staff has had that feeling of, well, are they really just going to sit and watch Days of Our Lives or the Netflix equivalent? So yes, it's and I guess we've learned to trust by the fact that people have achieved it. Dill, we'll jump into our last question, which is really a particularly important one, and you started to talk about a few ways that people could protect and bolster their career and opportunities going forward in terms of being prepared for the types of networking and virtual interviews, etc. But are there other ways that people can bolster their career and opportunities going forward?
I think it's important to remain current. So, Wendy, I think we would encourage people, and I think they are at the moment. I believe the number of enrolments into courses, university degrees, and the like have increased in the last number of months, and they often do it in times of crisis, I believe. But I think it's really important to remain current, and if you've got the time and the resources to be able to do that right now, I think that would be a really good way of doing it. I think it's really important that you take the time to reflect and do a personal check-in at the moment with yourself, your own personal performance review. If you haven't done one for a while, I think it's a really good time to do that, to reflect on where you are. Is that really what you want to be doing right now? What is the end goal? Where would you like to be? And is the position that you're in at the moment going to be able to help you to achieve that goal? Whether it is that you need to look at your entire portfolio, whether it is that you're sitting on boards and you're in paid work as well, whether they all complement one another. So to do a really good evaluation of you, your strengths, the gaps, what do you feel that you're not quite as confident with, and do something about that. Take the time to do the research. What's the best courses? Who are the best mentors to have right now? So there's a lot that you can do to bolster your career, and the networks, the hubs, the associations that you perhaps should be a part of or attending their sessions, the individuals that you should be reaching out to that are going to help you forward your career, the mentoring. I think there's lots of ways that you can protect and bolster your career right now if people have got the time to do it.
Thanks, Dylys. And we are coming towards the end of our time, so I guess I would just like to reflect on the fact that today has been a time of sharing. It's been a time of coming up with a few ideas and a few worries, that we do share as people in the non-profit sector, or just as people in jobs, or for people in our families who are also going through difficult times. I think the message very much is that there's a lot of peer support that there's a lot of people who genuinely care if things are not going well for you, and that putting up your hand is a very positive and proactive way to move forward at a difficult time, and that hope is particularly important along with these very practical strategies. And Marg's got nice of you to mention now's a great time to be enrolling at ACPNS. Of course, if you haven't picked up, we love our students, we admire our students, and we'd be very delighted to talk with anybody about courses. And Sharon, thanks for seconding that. And Elizabeth, thank you for your thank you. And let me just tell you about next time. And thanks, Leanne, for being with us too. So just so that you know about next time, August 27th, 9 to 10, and good to have you with us, Tara, as well. And we also have, courtesy of Dylys, our annual careers event, which we're going to do probably over 2 nights this time, because I think there's a bit of demand out there and there's a few different topics to cover. So we hope that you'll be able to tell your friends about that and be able to come along yourselves. This is a free event that we do every year about advancing your non-profit career and about some matters that are current for around board tables at this time. So we do a bit of a breakout room and World Cafe, which we can do on Zoom. So I'm filling in today for Dr. Ruth Knight. I feel like a radio DJ saying that, you know, your regular broadcaster is away, but the wonderful Ruth is off working with a non-profit organisation today, so you had to put up with me. But if you have any suggestions for tea and bun topics, ruth.knight@qut.edu.au, and you know that we love having you on these sessions, and you don't have to wait for the sessions. If there's something that we can help with in the meantime, you know that there's always a listening ear at ACPNS, and we have 1 or 2 bits of good information and 1 or 2 people in our networks that might be able to help you. And everybody's saying some lovely thanks there. And Margie, you were saying that you evaluated yourself in 2019. Let me just see. I spent all of 2019 evaluating my career, which led me to quitting my job and finding ACPNS. Great to be surrounded by so many wonderful people. Okay, yeah. So I won't pat ourselves on the back too much. Whereas as human as everybody else, not perfect by any means, but we certainly have a great culture and a great belief in the people of the non-profit sector, and we love to share that. So thank you for being part of all of that today. How lovely to start the day with, well, sort of start the day for those of us who start very early. It's kind of like middle of the day. But anyway, great to have you with us, and thank you for finding time. And do follow up on any of those points, and good luck.